Hello, hi, how are you? Let me show you something. Today we will talk about this book. This is Karl Marx, A 19th Century Life by Jonathan Sperber. So, as I haven't finished this book yet I am just one fourth into this book, but so far this book is very interesting. This book is about Karl Marx's life from his birth, and I have this book is divided into three parts, and the first part is shaping, second part is struggle, and the third part is legacy. As you can see, I hope you can see. So I am just reading first part. In first part there are further 5 points. First is son, second student, then editor, then emigre, then revolutionary. I have finished son first part, then student and editor and emigre. I'm on the fourth part. So far it has been very interesting and very insightful about Karl Marx's life. Before reading this book, actually I was reading a different book, and this one is Russian Revolution, as I had a deep interest in Russian history, but I couldn't read it somehow earlier, so I grabbed this copy. And this book is very interesting actually. Like, as you can see, this is from this period 1890 to 1928, and before the Russian Revolution there were certain circumstances, like economic circumstances, like social conditions, workers conditions, and land relations of peasants with the landlords. And as the slavery was abolished in 1861, so there was a different system, as government had given the land to the slaves, but there was a condition attached, that's redemption payments. So that's a completely different scenario. But in this book I came across a personality, and that personality is Trotsky. So I am just talking about books. This personality is very interesting, and he was the communist leader, and he was a major force behind 1905 and 1917 Russian Revolution. He was a very significant man. Like, you can say he was the second in command after Lenin's, and Lenin saw a huge potential in this personality. Trotsky was famous for one more thing apart from the revolutionary activities, and he formulated a theory in 1905, and the name of the theory was the theory of permanent revolution. This theory is quite elaborative, and it is quite different than socialist theory. His theory is influenced by Marx. So now you will see that why I chose this book, because Karl Marx has huge impact on Russian Revolution, and Trotsky was a product of Karl Marx ideology. So I thought, as I studied about Trotsky, I thought it would be better to study about Karl Marx. Karl Marx was born in a Jewish family. He always, all his life, he always hated being a Jew, but this is a fact. He was a Jew, and as he was very young, he got admission into a gymnasium, which is equal to high school. There he met a teacher, and his teacher was very active and had some grains of anti-regime elements. So Karl Marx was very impressed with his teacher, and after his attending his school, and one more important thing is that when he was in school, in gymnasium, he wrote a very interesting essay, and the name of the essay is observation of a young man on the choice of profession. This essay I have tried reading 4 or 5 times. It is so interesting that after many attempts I got some idea about it. Like, it is very interesting. In this he says that before you make a choice about taking or choosing a profession, it is very important to go through this process of internal self contemplation, or he says the deepest voice. You have to listen to this voice. It is the most inner voice of the heart, and only then and by experience you could choose a perfect profession according to your core interests. So this essay is quite lengthy and it is very tough. It will be very difficult for me to explain this essay in this video, but I would request you to go through this essay, especially if you are a fresher or you just have finished your high school or graduation. It is extremely important to read this essay and relate this to your further endeavors in your career, because by reading this essay you will gain some insight about what profession to choose. Not exactly what profession to choose, but how to choose a profession in general. So this essay is very important. And then he went to, after attending his gymnasium, then he went to University of Bonn in Germany. He was born in Germany in Trier city. Then his father sent him to University of Bonn. It was a famous university at that time. But Marx, like, he was very talented, but he went into the wrong company. Like, he spent most of his time in taverns or in fighting. Once he almost had a duel as well, but at the last minute I think somebody intervened and the duel postponed or just vanished altogether. So his father was not at all happy with his activities, because their family condition was also not very affluent. His father was barely managing his finances, his household, very on very sufficient terms. Like, they didn't have surplus. So his father wasn't happy at all with his activities, so he sent him to Berlin. In Berlin, Karl Marx life completely changed as he came across different personalities, and his interest in his education increased. Actually, his father wanted to make him a law academic student, but his interest changed altogether when he was in Berlin. His interest was in philosophy and economics and in politics as well. So there, like in those days, there were some underground societies, as it was the rule of Prussian government, and Prussian government was not much liberal. Their approach was quite strict. So the freedom of press was completely curtailed. So it was difficult to say anything openly. So in order to tackle that situation in society, in higher level society, like in intellectual domain, there were some secret societies where intellectuals would gather and they would discuss the further course. So Karl Marx started going there. So he gradually gained some insight about the events of the day, and he met many revolutionaries there. So this is the current theme, and by meeting so many personalities and by his reading, he just became so much passionate about current political system and how to answer the political needs of the time, like how to tackle the Prussian authority, like subtly or indirectly. Then he became like, after finishing his Berlin university education. Then he joined a newspaper, Rhineland News, and there he published some articles. His articles were polemical, which means like he almost destroyed the views of others, and he was anti-Prussian government, and he was uh, also against certain customs of the society. In those days, like, his childhood was spent in a completely different environment, and he suffered a lot. In those days his father suffered a lot. His father's changed many professions because of those changed social conditions. So all those things influenced him, and he he didn't become Karl Marx, the Karl Marx we know, in just one day. He was the product of many social events and political events as well. So when he was the editor, one interesting thing is that, like, before that, when I was reading this book, or when I was reading his articles or his writing in general, I found it very difficult. Like, if I suggest you, if you read it, do tell me whether you find it easy or difficult. For me it was very difficult. Then I read this book, some portion. In those days, like, it was difficult to write, it was difficult to attack the government directly. They had to choose their wordings very carefully. So Karl Marx would write his articles, his essays, in a way that he could like just bypass the censor board somehow, like the petty officials, censor board officials. So he wrote in such a manner that it was difficult for censor board to pinpoint exactly what was against the government or what was not. So his writing was very difficult because of this censorship atmosphere. So far I have found this book very interesting, and there is one more theory, which is theory of alienation, and I will cover this theory in some other video because this theory is quite elaborative, and there are 4 points. It is basically related to labor and the product he creates, and the relation between labor and the product. It is very interesting. At first it doesn't seem interesting, but at a psychological level or at a deeper level it becomes very interesting, and it is very related to current society as well. And as I have mentioned that he was a Jew, but he wrote many indecent things about the Jews, like, you can say, anti-Semitic things. This is an argument, or this is a point where his critics harshly criticize him because he criticizes Jews. You know what, like, I have read many books, especially Nazi literature and German history, related to after First World War and during the Second World War. I don't know why people treat Jews people differently. Like, there are historical reasons, but I don't agree with it. They should be treated politely like any other human beings in the same way. Like, but I think this discrimination is widespread in India. This casteism system is so widespread even after the abolition of this untouchability. So it is widely prevalent. Like, sometimes I think that certain concept just changes its form. Like, when slavery was abolished in the mid 19th century, it just transformed into different forms. It was not abolished altogether, but it was abolished gradually. Slaves' conditions was not improved overnight, but gradually after some time. And to some extent, I believe, and it is my personal opinion, that slavery still exists, like in a different form. Sometimes, like if you are working in a factory and you have taken some advance from your employer and you have to pay that advance in 4 or 5 years, then you are kind of in a slavish position and you are a slave, even not in a legal term but in a figurative term. It is called slavery, I guess. So I just got distracted, but yeah, this book is very interesting. You can choose this book. And Karl Marx, let me tell you one more thing. This book will be very helpful for those students who study philosophy or who are from the political background, especially those students who have studied Friedrich Hegel's philosophy. Hegel's concept of absolute spirit is very famous. I haven't studied it. It is too complex for me, as I am not a political or philosophy student. I am just reading this so that I could have a broad understanding of the society and of the history in general. And before reading this book, I just finished Communist Manifesto. It was a fast reading. I will read it once more, but the relationship of bourgeoisie and proletariat, this thing is very, complex and at the same time very relevant. The knowledge of these concepts is extremely important to understand the contemporary system of, I think, working in the factory. It is very related. I think Karl Marx, as it is widely said, that he has been able to successfully diagnose the problem of labors, like the problems labor faced in everyday life. He was very successful. So that was one of the reasons that many workmen supported his ideas. And there is one more thing, I guess, like dialectic materialism. He presented this theory. I am at a loss at this stage about this theory, but I will try my best to learn it. So now you have to do two things. You have to read the essay Observation of a Young Man on the Choice of Profession, and you have to understand the theory of alienation. Both these things are not related to politics. You can apply these things in general as well in your life. And theory of alienation can be applied in so many different ways. I am trying to apply it one particular way. I will reveal it on some other time. And for now, I think this video is quite long. I don't know whether I covered anything or not, but as I am still learning from this book, and this Friedrich Engels story is also very interesting. He became a lifelong friend of Karl Marx, even though they fought in between throughout their life. But he was a very genuine friend of Karl Marx. With that, I think I should take your permission and I will see you again. And let me show you some books once again, so that if you have any interest. Actually, I didn't read this one. I finished a different book of Trotsky. I will show you some other day. And this is the book as well of Russian Revolution. So I think to understand our concept, one book is not sufficient. And one more thing that I particularly like about this book is that it has decollages. I like book that has decollages. It's, uneven surface. It looks very what should I say, very different. Not royal exactly, but very elegant. and there were certain passages that I can't cover because I don't want to prolong this video. So with that, I should take your permission, and I hope I will see you very soon in next video when I have read more about this book and we will discuss it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.